Brilliance Audio.
No Place to Run by Mark Edwards. Performed by Will M. Watt. Francesca was 600 miles into her journey home, and dawn was breaking over the forest when she saw the woman come running out of the trees towards the tracks. Francesca had finally given up trying to get back to sleep at 5. The compartment was stuffy and claustrophobic, the bunk as stiff and narrow as an ironing board, and the train shook so much she could feel her insides coming loose. She had fantasized about flopping into her own bed in Seattle, until she remembered she didn't have anyone to share it with. She had scattered Kenneth's last remains on a beach in Los Angeles. 75 years old, and she was all alone. Francesca maneuvered her aching body out of the bunk bed. She had gone to sleep fully dressed, just in case there was an emergency. She slipped her shoes on, the super comfortable Nikes she used for running. Her son Stephen could hardly believe she still went out jogging, but she swore the day she gave up would be the day she dropped. In fact, she itched to stretch her legs and go for a run now. If only she weren't stuck on this stupid train. It was all Kenneth's fault, God bless him. This journey had been part of his last will and testament. Once upon a time, an 18-year-old Angelino had taken the train north to Seattle, where he had settled, and he had written in his will that he wanted his ashes transported to the city of his birth by the same method, along the same tracks, which was all very romantic in a self-loving kind of way. But had he thought about his poor wife having to endure a 32-hour journey on Amtrak's Coast Starlight, and then another all the way home? Like hell he had. Opening and closing the door as quietly as she could so as not to wake the passengers in the next compartment, Francesca made her way into the empty dining car and then into business class, which was hardly better than coach. There were no beds here, just reclining seats, the passengers slumbering, eye masks on, earplugs in. She wrinkled her nose at the sweet and sour odour of nocturnal gases and hurried through. She caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the window, glowing like a ghost of herself, and hurriedly averted her eyes. She was in no rush to join Kenneth. The sightseer lounge had floor-to-ceiling windows, which, during the day, gave the passengers a full view of the forests through which the train ran for much of its journey. There were a few sleeping bodies scattered around the car at this moment. A Japanese man, a railway enthusiast Francesca had chatted to earlier, was slumped over a table. Over in the corner, an American man with a beard and a baseball cap sat in the seat he'd occupied since they'd left L.A., eyes closed. Beside him, his wife rested her head on his wide shoulder. Francesca settled down at a table and wondered what time they would start to serve breakfast, and when she would get home. The train was moving slower than usual, probably stuck behind a freight train. She turned to the window, expecting to see the washed-out phantom version of herself there again, but it was gone. The window was no longer a mirror. Without her noticing, the world outside had started to lighten. One moment, nothing to see, and then colours and shapes coming out of the blackness. A strip of orange glowed on the horizon where the mountains rose. Dark blue brightened to purple, and pink-edged clouds drifted into focus. Francesca leaned closer to the glass, transfixed by the developing spectacle of the planet waking up. Feeling the need to know where she was, she took out her phone and opened the Maps app, something a passenger she'd chatted to on the way down had shown her. They were passing through Northern California, not far from the border with Oregon. The nearest town was a place she'd never heard of, Eaglewood. The train entered the forest. Those trees they were passing looked like cedars, she thought, though she'd never been good with that kind of thing. But she didn't have time to study them, to figure it out, because in the next moment the train, still moving at about half its normal speed, entered a clearing of flat, yellow grass. A girl was running towards the train. Francesca sat upright. She blinked twice, wondering if this was a hallucination, a trick of the mind or the light. But no, the girl, the young woman, was real. Francesca was certain of it. The woman also appeared to be wondering if she was seeing things, staring at the train as if it might be a mirage. She was white and youthful, with long legs like Bambi's and vivid auburn hair that bounced behind her as she sprinted across the uneven ground. Then Francesca realized something else. The woman was not alone. There was a man running after her. He was white too, with a bald patch on top of his head. Francesca knew instantly he was chasing the woman, gaining on her, and Francesca wanted to yell, to tell her to hurry. And then the woman stumbled, fell onto her hands and knees. And as the spot on the train where Francesca stood passed the patch of ground where the woman had fallen, she looked up, straight at Francesca, and their eyes met through the glass. For a second that was all, because at that moment the train picked up speed, and Francesca pressed her face against the window, her focus switching to the man. His face was down, so all she could see was that bald patch on top of his head. But as the train entered a thicket of trees, obscuring the clearing from view, Francesca saw the woman twist onto her back as the man reached down to grab hold of her.